look back at the Bob Knight era and really don't understand that his consistency was based on really, getting old and staying old as a team. And what happens now is you start, we start digging into the one and done pool, and not being the Kentuckys, not getting the number 1, 2, or 3 player, not being the North Carolinas and the Dukes. It's hard to recover when a Thomas Bryant leaves or when a Noah Vonleh leaves, and you expect them to be a big part of it, of the team and of the school for a long time, and they get up and leave. But I think people get frustrated because they're thinking like the 90s, or thinking like the 80s, and it's just not what it is. And my question to you is it, I'm looking at, as we crawl into this year's team and in the last few years with the Archie Miller era, is it it seems as if they're getting the recruits. It seems like they're getting in-state guys to get Mr. Basketballs, but is the talent in Indiana not once what it was, and that doesn't mean as much as it used to? Is that the reason? Is one of the reasons why, or what could be the reasons why we're getting the talent, it seems as if, but we're still wallowing in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that certainly I think the recruiting base is still strong. I don't think you would see the Big Ten as strong as it was, and I would even go so far as to to say that Indiana's recruiting base isn't just in state, it's the region, it's Illinois. I don't have to tell you, it's Illinois. Right. You look at, Indiana's had some great players down the years from Ohio. Right. It's I don't think the Big Ten would be as strong as it is if if for some reason the state, the recruiting base within the state or even within the region had sort of, shrunk. And obviously, yes, I think recruiting is less regional than it used to be, because it's a lot easier for a kid to, grow up in Chicago, but okay, it's only a 2.5-hour plane ride to LA. I can suddenly envision myself playing at UCLA. Whereas maybe, maybe in 1975, that's not as much the case. But I think that the talent is still there. And I think that the formula makes a certain amount of sense, which is, and we've seen Kansas do this, we've seen Villanova do this, is 4-year players, 3- and 4-year players that are basically supplemented by, elite, maybe 1 and done, 2 and done type guys. You even, go back and look, for example, at some of Bill Self's good teams recently. Devontae Graham was, I think, maybe, outside the top 80 recruiting rankings. Frank Mason wasn't a top 100 player. We could say the same with Villanova, where they've had guys that were top 100, top 125, but weren't necessarily elite. But then they're, then it's kind of headlined by a guy who's a 5-star who's only going to stay in college for a couple of years. And it's just finding that right blend. I think early for Archie Miller, and this was, again, just timing. This wasn't really anyone's fault necessarily, but, that first team he inherited, he had 5 seniors, immediately lost 3 players to the draft, and then had 2 players transfer over the course of his first 12 months. So, within his first year on the job, 10 scholarship players are off the roster that he inherited the day he started at Indiana. And again, that wasn't really anyone's fault. That was just a factor of timing. Plus, there's always going to be a little bit of roster flux when a new coach comes in. And I know at least one of those players, to be fair, said that he didn't necessarily want to leave, but felt like he was kind of, pressured, or at least not really wanted, Grant Galen. But still, nevertheless, it's still 9, 10 guys. I think what's been harder to pin down in the last couple of years has been, kind of the progress and the development of some players. And of course, in individual situations, you can look at a Rob Finney and say he's lost so much time to injury in his first couple seasons. You can look at Race Thompson, who I do think, to be fair to him, is really starting to kind of blossom now. But again, lost basically his entire redshirt freshman season to injury. But I guess you can also look at a Trace Jackson Davis getting better and Armand Franklin getting better. But there is still just a feeling that that the individual sort of growth, for whatever reason, isn't building this sort of collective whole that is more consistent, that is raising the floor to that point where, kind of to your point about Bob Knight's tenure, and this is true for all the great coaches. It's about sort of saying that the baseline is here, and we won't wildly outperform the baseline every year. We're not going to the Final Four every season. But if the baseline starts at, let's say, 20 wins, top 6 in our conference, NCAA tournament, 19 seasons out of 20,
right?
Then if the floor is already that high, it's going to be a lot easier to build teams that can make deep runs in the NCAA tournament more consistently, that can compete at the top end of the conference more consistently, and so on and so forth. And I think that's where it's felt like Indiana, again, and I think you see this even in performances where it feels like, you can kind of compartmentalize these individual positives, but you just don't know if you feel like the, kind of the little things are adding up to the big things the way that it seems like they should be. And I know that's kind of a vague statement, but I think I've struggled to get my own, kind of arms around how to describe what it feels like. And that is a part of it for me, that it feels like a lot more of this should be adding up to more consistent performances than it has so far.
Right.